What happens when Keanu Reeves sits down on The View expecting a normal conversation, and a question from Whoopi Goldberg suddenly shifts the mood of the entire studio? Make sure to subscribe to Fame After Hours, and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The audience is already applauding as Keanu Reeves walks onto the stage. He smiles politely, giving a small wave before shaking hands with the hosts around the table. The energy in the room is warm at first. Keanu sits down calmly, adjusting his jacket while the applause fades. Whoopi Goldberg smiles at him. "Keanu, it's good to have you here." "Thank you," Keanu replies with a relaxed smile. "It's great to be here." Another host jumps in. "You've had an incredible career, and people always say the same thing about you, that you're one of the nicest guys in Hollywood." The audience claps again. Keanu nods modestly. "That's kind of people to say." Whoopi leans slightly forward. "But fame changes people sometimes. You've been in this industry for decades. How do you stay grounded?" Keanu shrugs gently. "I try to focus on the work. Acting, storytelling, and the people around me." The conversation feels easy at first. The hosts talk about his recent projects, his fans, and the reputation he has built over the years. One host says, "People love the fact that you avoid a lot of the drama we usually see in Hollywood." Keanu chuckles quietly. "I try to." The audience laughs lightly. Whoopi nods slowly, flipping a card in front of her. "You know, that reputation is interesting though." Keanu looks toward her, still calm. "How so?" "Well," Whoopi says, "a lot of people say you're incredibly humble. But others wonder if that image is a little too perfect." The room becomes slightly quieter. Keanu tilts his head. "Too perfect?" Whoopi continues. "I mean, every celebrity has critics. Some people say the internet created this almost myth-like version of you." A few murmurs come from the audience. One host quickly laughs. "The Keanu Reeves is the nicest man alive thing?" "Exactly," Whoopi says. Keanu smiles politely. "Well, I'm definitely not perfect." "But don't you think," Whoopi adds, "that sometimes celebrities benefit from that kind of narrative?" The tone of the conversation begins to shift. Keanu pauses for a moment before answering. "I think people form opinions," he says calmly. "Sometimes they're accurate, sometimes they're not." Whoopi nods slowly but keeps pressing. "But when the internet treats someone like a hero, doesn't that create unrealistic expectations?" Keanu folds his hands together. "I suppose it could." Another host jumps in, sensing the tension. "I think what people respond to is the stories about you helping people, donating quietly, things like that." Keanu shakes his head slightly. "A lot of those stories get exaggerated." The audience murmurs again. Whoopi raises her eyebrows. "So you're saying some of those stories aren't true?" "I'm saying," Keanu replies carefully, "that the internet tends to simplify people." Whoopi nods but doesn't move on. "But do you understand why some people question that image?" The studio becomes noticeably quiet now. Keanu's expression changes just slightly. His smile fades into a more serious look. "I understand that people have questions," he says. Whoopi leans forward again. "Because sometimes when someone is portrayed as almost too good, people start wondering what they're not seeing." A few audience members exchange looks. One host tries to lighten the moment. "Okay, now it sounds like we're investigating Keanu Reeves." The audience laughs nervously. But Whoopi continues. "No, I'm just asking an honest question. Fame can create myths." Keanu nods slowly. "Yes, it can." "Which makes people curious," Whoopi adds. "Is the real Keanu Reeves exactly what fans think he is?" The room grows even quieter. Keanu looks directly at her now. "Well," he says calmly, "I think the real me is just a person trying to live his life." The audience applauds softly. But Whoopi isn't done yet. She leans back slightly and says, "Some people would say that answer sounds very safe." The comment lands heavier than expected. Keanu's expression tightens for just a moment. "Safe," he repeats. "Yes," Whoopi says. "It's a very diplomatic answer." A long pause fills the studio. Keanu exhales slowly. I'm not trying to be diplomatic, he says. I'm just being honest. The audience reacts with quiet applause again. But the mood at the table has clearly changed. The conversation that started as a friendly interview is now beginning to feel like something much more tense, and everyone in the studio can feel it building. The quiet applause fades, but the atmosphere around the table feels noticeably heavier. Whoopi Goldberg glances at the other hosts and then back toward Keanu Reeves, who now sits a little straighter in his chair. Whoopi taps the table lightly with her pen. "Let me ask you something a little more direct," she says. Keanu nods calmly. "Sure." "You've built this reputation," Whoopi continues, "as someone who's humble, private, generous, almost untouched by the usual celebrity ego." The audience listens closely. But some critics say that kind of image can also be carefully managed. A few murmurs ripple through the audience. One of the co-hosts quickly jumps in. "I think what Whoopi means is that celebrities sometimes work hard to maintain a certain public persona." Keanu nods slowly. "That happens in the industry, yes." Whoopi leans forward slightly. "So the question becomes, how much of what people see from you is the real you, and how much is part of that persona?" Keanu pauses before answering. "Well," he says calmly, "I don't really spend time trying to create a persona." "But you must know," Whoopi replies, "that millions of people see you a certain way." "I'm aware of that," Keanu says. "And doesn't that pressure you to live up to that image?" Keanu shifts slightly in his seat. His tone remains controlled, but there's a noticeable firmness now. "I don't think about it that way." Whoopi tilts her head. "You don't?" "No," he replies. "Because if you start living your life based on an image people created, you stop being yourself." The audience applauds lightly. Another host nods. "That's actually a really interesting way to look at it." But Whoopi isn't ready to let the topic go. "Still," she says, "some people might argue that Hollywood is full of carefully protected images." Keanu nods. "That's true. So why should the public believe yours is different?" The studio becomes quiet again. Keanu exhales slowly, clearly choosing his words carefully. "I'm not asking anyone to believe anything," he says. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. "I'm just living my life the way I always have," Keanu continues. "If people respect that, I'm grateful. If they question it, that's their right." The audience reacts with a mixture of applause and murmurs. Whoopi leans back slightly but keeps her eyes on him. "But you have to admit," she says, "when someone becomes almost universally loved online, it makes people curious about what they're missing." That comment hangs in the air for a moment. Keanu's expression tightens slightly. He leans forward just a little now. "Well," he says calmly but firmly, "sometimes people aren't missing anything." The audience claps again, louder this time. But the tension at the table hasn't gone away. If anything, it's starting to build. The applause lingers for a moment, but the tension at the table hasn't disappeared. Whoopi Goldberg folds her hands together and studies Keanu Reeves carefully, as if deciding whether to move on or push the conversation a little further. "Well," Whoopi says slowly, "I'll give you credit for being very calm about all of this." A few people in the audience laugh softly. Keanu nods politely. "I'm trying." "But let me ask something else," Whoopi continues. "You've been in Hollywood for a long time. You've seen how fame works, how narratives get built around celebrities." "That's true," Keanu replies. "So when people talk about you like you're this perfect guy, doesn't that ever make you uncomfortable?" Keanu pauses before answering. "I wouldn't say uncomfortable," he says. "But I do think it's unrealistic." The audience murmurs in agreement. "Unrealistic how?" Whoopi asks. "Because nobody is perfect," Keanu replies. "Everyone has flaws. Everyone has difficult moments. When people create this perfect version of someone, it stops feeling human." Another host nods. "That actually makes a lot of sense." But Whoopi leans forward again. "So you're saying the public image isn't accurate?" "I'm saying it's incomplete," Keanu answers calmly. The audience reacts with light applause. Whoopi tilts her head slightly. "Incomplete, or carefully protected?" The room goes quiet again. Keanu's expression changes now. The polite smile he had earlier is gone, replaced by something more serious. "Whoopi," he says, his voice still controlled but noticeably firmer, "I think there's a difference between privacy and protecting an image." Whoopi raises her eyebrows slightly. "Go on," she says. Keanu leans forward a little. "Some people choose to share every detail of their lives with the public," he explains. "Others choose to keep certain things private. That doesn't mean they're hiding something." A few audience members clap quietly. Whoopi nods but doesn't back down. "But the public is curious," she says. "Especially when someone becomes a symbol of kindness or humility." Keanu exhales slowly. "I understand curiosity," he replies. Then he looks directly at her. "But sometimes curiosity turns into suspicion for no reason." The audience reacts with louder applause now. One of the other hosts quickly jumps in. "Okay, that's a fair point." But the energy at the table has clearly shifted. Keanu sits back slightly, still calm but visibly more serious than when the conversation started. Whoopi glances at the audience and then back at him. "Well," she says with a small smile, "I didn't expect this to turn into such a philosophical discussion." A few people laugh. But the tension in the studio hasn't completely faded, and everyone can feel that the moment is far from over. The audience's laughter fades, but the tension around the table is still noticeable. Whoopi Goldberg adjusts the papers in front of her while looking across at Keanu Reeves, who now sits quietly with his hands folded. "Well," Whoopi says with a half-smile, "I think we may have surprised our audience a little today." A few people in the crowd laugh softly. Keanu nods. "Maybe a little." Another host jumps in quickly, trying to lighten the mood. But that's what makes conversations like this interesting. People get to hear different perspectives. The audience applauds. Whoopi looks back at Keanu. "I will say this, you handled that pretty calmly." Keanu shrugs slightly. "I just answered honestly." "And I respect that," Whoopi replies. "Even if we pushed a little." The audience reacts with light laughter again. Keanu smiles faintly. "That's part of the job, right?" "Exactly," Whoopi says. Another host leans forward. "I think what people are hearing here is that fame creates expectations that no human can really live up to." Keanu nods. "That's true. People are complicated. Nobody is just one thing." The audience claps again. Whoopi glances toward the crowd and then back at Keanu. "Well, one thing is clear. People care about how you present yourself. That's why these conversations happen." "And that's fair," Keanu says. "People should ask questions. That's healthy." The mood at the table finally begins to relax. One host laughs and says, "Okay, before we accidentally start another debate, let's just say this has been a very honest conversation." The audience applauds loudly. As the segment begins wrapping up, the hosts thank Keanu for joining them on The View. But even before the show finishes, clips of the discussion are already spreading online. Within minutes, viewers start reacting on social media. Some people praise Keanu for staying calm under pressure. Others debate whether the questions from Whoopi were fair. Comments flood in from fans around the world. Some write that Keanu handled the situation with patience. Others say the tension made the interview one of the most interesting moments the show has had in weeks. By the end of the day, short clips of the conversation are circulating everywhere online, sparking debates about celebrity image, privacy, and how public figures are questioned on live television. And now we want to hear from you. How did you think about this tense moment between Keanu Reeves and Whoopi Goldberg on The View? Did Keanu handle the situation well, or do you think the questions were fair? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to Fame After Hours for more real talk show stories and explosive on-air moments.